This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
None of us are working with China. I mean, please, as soon as you say that someone is disloyal to this country, as soon as you say that someone is working with foreign agents for a foreign interest, not just that individual, their families, their communities, their lives are ruined. Because once you say that about someone, how do you prove a negative? How do you prove that you're not? Now, I am fortunate. I can go back to my constituency and tell people, first of all, I'm white.
This is exactly what foreign entities want. It's exactly what they want, Madam Chair. They want to sow the seeds of doubt and, oh, was the election stolen? And let's be careful. Let's be careful on what we know not to be true. Let's be careful on that. We see firsthand what happened and what's happening to the south of us with respect to disinformation, with respect to doubt being sown in America and the democracy. And we cannot allow that to happen here, Madam Chair. We cannot. We cannot. We are better than this. But let me appeal to other parties on this amendment. Support it. Support it. Let's move forward. Let's move forward. The rapporteur, and I'll say it again, I'll try to say it clearly here. The rapporteur has the power to appoint or to recommend a full public inquiry. So, call a spade a spade.
What the Prime Minister just announced in the last couple of weeks was an independent expert. Hopefully that's better terminology for the Conservatives to accept. An independent expert that will look at where any holes exist within current organizations like NCIRA and NSICOP and determine if there is anything that needs to be done or make recommendations on how to further strengthen those organizations. And then the other thing that the independent expert is required to do is to look at the issue of this foreign interference and determine the best place for it to occur. The Prime Minister said in his statement, he said, we will accept whatever they put forward. So if the independent expert or the rapporteur, whatever we're calling them, agrees that, you know what, Mr. Cooper was right all along, this is a public inquiry is the only answer here, then we will accept that and we'll move forward with that. But we let an independent individual do that. We don't make it a partisan issue. And I don't see why, unless you're afraid that you will never find somebody who's impartial out there that will actually agree with a public inquiry. If you're afraid you'll never find that, then I can understand why you would be against that idea. Because I just don't think that based on the information that's come forward, based on the experts that have come to this committee, based on Conservative senators, Conservative campaign managers, they all say the same thing. NSICOP is the place where this belongs. It doesn't belong in the public forum. Unless you're willing to accept, unless you're willing to, if you're willing to accept a special expert to look at this, and you're genuinely worried about making sure that this is dealt with in the right way, and you strongly believe that the right way is through a public inquiry, and you feel that that's the best way, well then put your faith in an expert to decide that. Put your faith in the expert coming to the same conclusion. The only reason why they're not putting their faith in the expert, Madam Chair, is because they know that they're wrong, and they know that the position that they're taking is inaccurate. They know that Once that happens, the issue is over and they no longer have the opportunity to fundraise off this. And that's why they're not giving up on this. What I actually find really surprising, if I'm being honest, Madam Chair, is the position of the Bloc and the NDP. I would have thought that they would have come around to understanding two things. One, that a public inquiry is not, and this is not me trying to convince my Bloc and NDP colleagues, just listen to the experts. Listen to the people who came to this committee, and we asked. Not a single person that came before this committee actually said the best place for this is in a public inquiry. Not a single one. So I get the Conservatives' politics on this. What I don't get is the Bloc and the NDP.
We see those mirrors in the U.S. We see the stop the steal, rhetoric out of the U.S. And then we start to see conservatives here using similar language, right? I saw Mr. Cooper talking about collusion, right? Where is this language coming from? Our neighbors to the south talking about corrupt, how there's something to hide, suggesting that the elections were not determined by Canadians. And then when directly asked, because I think conservatives must have some polling or know that being too closely aligned with Trump-style politics is probably not very favorable in this country, they go, no, we trust the results of the election, but we think there was collusion. We think the Liberals are in partnership with China, but we have no proof of that. But we'd like to just sow the doubts in Canadians' minds. And they're doing a good job of that, actually, of sowing doubt, but only amongst their own voters. I saw a poll today that 48% of Conservatives think that the election outcome were not determined by Canadians. It's 7% for Liberal voters. So you're seeing an erosion in Conservative voters of the trust in our democratic institutions. We watched that same erosion in the US. And what eventually happened there, when you start building this vacuum of mistrust in our institutions, what happens is there's a group of people that really believe that the democratic process is no longer fair and free. And when, confirmation or proof doesn't exist to back those things up, you start to think it's a giant conspiracy.
Frankly, Madam Chair, I have to tell you, colleagues have referenced the convoy of last year. They've referenced several Conservative members who met with Christine Anderson from AFD. And I have to tell you that my community members in my community here in York Centre were appalled by this. They were hurt last year when I myself, walking through the convoy on a daily basis, saw Jewish stars of David as buttons, to see swastikas flown, to know that at the core of many of the speeches of the leadership of the convoy were really about marginalization, about distrust of minority and ethnic communities that are part of the fabric of this country. And frankly, the fuel to the fire of the convoy and what happened on January 6th, the year prior, was about really misinformation and disinformation spreading at warp speed. And where does it spread? It spreads online. This is no different. This level of partisan foils that are being thrown out without any sense of accountability, frankly, by Conservatives of what they are putting into the Twitterverse and how they speak. And no apology either. I haven't heard the leader of the opposition really be public and firm about his members who dined with Christine Anderson as a member of Parliament who represents a predominantly Jewish community. I find it abhorrent and offensive, as do members of the Muslim community that for their anti-Islam views, and frankly, their Holocaust denial views of a lack of responsibility and understanding what are the facts of history, Madam Chair. And, and we've seen this in other forums of the power of this. It was the Russian foreign minister who, in his frankly disgusting justifications of the illegal war against Ukraine, claimed that there are Nazis in Ukraine that they are trying to foil, or alternatively, that Russian soldiers will be enduring a Holocaust in fighting the war. I mean, this kind of rhetoric, this type of, use and abuse of language and Holocaust denial that seems to be free-flowing through Twitter and other platforms on social media, and then to see that those same weaving and turning of language is used by colleagues across the way when it suits them. Out of this, I come from a country where terrorism is rife, where security are paramount issues on a day-to-day basis, Madam Chair. And there's an understanding, at least certainly where I come from, that there are things that we can talk about with transparency, and there are some things that get talked about, but behind closed doors.
Its constitution was even able to overcome an insurrection on January 6, 2021. And it is our closest ally, and we need to hope and pray for them that Americans believe in their election system, which is fair and free, in the same way we want Canadians to continue to believe in our election system.
We are getting near 5.5, 6 hours today alone, where we've had Liberal members of Parliament come to the committee here today talking about their work history and some of the traffic they've had in their constituency office. We just had members reading from a book into the record to delay a vote on something that, frankly, we talk about nonpartisan and was alluded to several times. We have Conservatives, the Bloc Québécois, and the NDP here ready to vote right now and call the question to have the Prime Minister, Chief of Staff come and answer questions on the election interference by Beijing and that portfolio here at the House and Procedural Affairs Committee.